All right, well then, let's call this meeting to order if you could, for the master board. By a roll call. Tom Martinez.
Adam Goldstone.
Noah Hubert.
Andy Ulmer is late getting here. Go ahead, Captain.
Assistant Chief Michelle Goldman.
Sorry.
Assistant Fire Marshal Mark Sampson.
Assistant Chief Building Official Matt Payette.
Plans Examiner for Building Services, Terrence Stewart.
And building official Blas Hernandez.
Very good. We have a quorum. We're with the two members. Andy is late getting here, but he'll get here. We want to discuss the adoption of the proposed 2024 International Codes and Amendments. So I'll defer this to Chief Hernandez.
Thank you and welcome everybody. And this year is a little different than previous years or previous code cycles. As you might, or if you may or may not have heard, the International Residential Code and the International Energy Code were delayed for last minute changes, and those were not available until August, I think it was, and therefore that's going to delay our entire adoption. Okay, we are actually in the process of creating amendments for electrification. I think you may have heard of that. Well, the city council decided not to go to full electrification because there's been some lawsuits. Because if you think about it, you're taking away a person's ability to decide whether or not they want to use gas or not. And right now, there are cities who are in lawsuits. And with that, the city council decided they didn't want to go full electric, okay? But we will work on amendments to be in line with the state energy code. The state of Colorado now is in the energy business, okay? So they are creating more energy codes that we have to follow. We're gonna go in front of city council and we're gonna ask for guidance because if we're going to wait for the energy code to be finalized, that's going to be May 1st is the final draft when it's completed, and September is when it's actually approved. I just talked to Tim Pate from Broomfield. He's on the board. He said, "Blas, don't expect that to be done until sometime in September." And so, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to go in front of the city council. We're going to say, "Hey, listen. Do you want us to go ahead and push this through to adopt whatever we can? Or do you want us to wait until the state energy code is completed?" I mean, we can do either or. It depends
Is it
on,
the state code, Blas, that you're waiting
that's
for?
the state code, yeah.
Not ICC code.
Correct. Yeah, the state's low carbon.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a low carbon, and that's going to be, we have to follow that. Once that's approved, it becomes our code. And so that's kind of where we are. So what we can do tonight, if you want, is we can talk a little bit about the and the other question I wanted to ask is, we don't have all of the amendments finalized, and a lot of these that we're waiting for are going to be the energy code amendments. Okay. Now, if you guys want to reconvene and come back again and to review those one more time, I'm perfectly happy to do that. Or say, just notify us of the changes. I mean, I don't have an answer as to whether or not the master board has to approve our code amendments before it moves on to city council.
Before it goes to adoption. Before it
Is
goes
that
to
part
be
of
adopted.
our, is that our state or our city requirement? Okay.
Correct.
So with that being said, we want to get just a little feedback on what we're doing on the codes, and I believe fire pretty much have your codes, your amendments finalized. So we'll talk about the codes that we're thinking about adopting, and then once we figure out how city council wants us to move forward on the electrification codes, we'll finalize those. but it may be later because I'm not for sure what they're gonna tell us. If they want us to go ahead and move without it, don't worry about it, we'll get those later. Or yeah, let's go ahead and wait for the state energy code to be complete before you guys adopt the energy codes.
So Blas brings up an interesting point, and we have not had this internal discussion yet, but we will, as far as timing, because when we're ready and fired, like he said, and then we're looking at things like where there's overlap, the building code for sure, residential code for sure, property maintenance code perhaps. What else?
Existing building?
Existing building codes. So we could move forward with a lot of these. So this meeting is not really just for naught, if you will. I think it's important to do it because there may be a bunch that moves forward. So
Well, the question I have to ask, again, look at the big 10,000-foot picture. What is the public opinion at this point of these proposed changes that we're talking about? Because one of the things we're seeing, and I don't know about what you guys in your trades, but at our level here, we're seeing challenges from locations obtaining sufficient power to make the changes to total electrification. Xcel Energy does not have the power in their grids to do what ICC is right now is proposing. And so the question would be, are we even having these open discussions or references with the general public as to how they feel? Because it's going to impact everybody when all of a sudden it becomes a code requirement that you have a UV connection, or an EV connection. I mean, it's I know that there was talk at one of our meetings about that they was making a requirement potentially of having an EV connection in every new residence. That's a lot of power you got to bring to that property at whose expense, and how you going to power this grid. And this is why I again personally and I maybe should speak out of turn, but I'm just concerned that going this direction. The carbon footprint you talk about, Blas. I can't tell you how many phone calls I get in a week about that very code reference and the challenges we're seeing with people manipulating safety controls on equipment because they can't meet the emission standards that DPHE has put out. And we're going to see somebody get seriously injured with equipment failure because of what the state is trying to emphasize. And DPHE's got the manpower and the teeth to come in and assess fines on these businesses. They have a big audit going right now at Amgen, or whatever they're called now. In Boulder,
Nexus.
yeah, exactly. In Boulder, they threatened to shut down all their boilers because they didn't meet the emission standards. And so we caught their chief maintenance guy manipulating controls and bypassing safety controls. I had a come to Jesus discussion. You cannot do that because you're going to kill somebody. And so we just wonder how far do you go with this to where it becomes not user friendly and counterproductive to society.
Well, so I can say that a lot of the council meetings that I've been to recently, there have been a few people have gone up and spoke out against
Yeah.
the electrification. I haven't heard anybody in the public actually speak forward yet. That and talking with LPC, the Longmont Power,
Right.
with it only being new homes, new subdivisions. From what I understand, they expect they would be able to handle that in newer subdivisions. So only what are putting in new infrastructure,
Right.
essentially.
I think that the other thing that comes with that we're dealing with, we talked about it at the last code cycle about whether to require solar. When the place is put on the solar, right, that obviously adds, or reduces the demand on the grid,
Right.
right? And so I think they kind of go hand in hand. So we may have to address that sooner than later about solar requirements, just to help offset that.
Yeah, I don't know where that's at as well as solar requirements. Because we're going to hear about it from the public. Especially at the national board, they're going to be sending applications. Hey, I don't want to do this. I want a variance against what you're making me do.
And I imagine, and based kind of what Blas has said, what he's hearing from them is that they're going to handle about like they've done residential sprinklers, right? Which is they're going to probably delay parts of that requirement, and they'll probably allow some. Like we have townhouses now, but it took us what? That was approved in 2009. It was in the IRC in 2009.
The first time it came in,
Or 03 or 09 code. It
I
was
thought it was on mine.
09.
It was 09, I think. And we didn't get even townhouses or duplexes until 18.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would imagine that is the steps you will see, and we still don't have the requirement for single family, which is in ours. So I would imagine they would stepstone it.
I can see your point too, and you would know better, right? Most of the people applying are developers right now, right? Or big contractors. So I mean, if they're not gonna complain on that, I don't know how many individuals.
Yeah, I don't know, actually, this is why I brought it up, because at some point in time, some individual homeowner is gonna say, wait a minute, does this apply to me? And if so, I need to get a variance applied because I can't afford what it's gonna take to put this in. You know, so I mean, at some point in time, you gotta set parameters to grandfather stuff in. You know, I mean,
So-
everybody does.
As our jurisdiction at the university has been enforcing or applying is the right word, there's no enforcement. There's no enforcement. That's a whole other discussion. No, I mean, at the state level, there's no enforcement. We've asked that question.
Yeah.
We've
No, they
asked,
don't enforce anything.
they can't, they don't
Well,
have.
they can.
I've been in the room with the guy who's chairing the Colorado Model Energy Code development, and I asked the question, I said, so we do plan review, and we sort of monitor our own process, because we're good citizens, but what if, you know, like who do we turn that into? Nobody.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. What I can say is a couple things. We've been in this, there's a Colorado Model Energy Code. It's been in force since the first of this year. As jurisdictions, the way it's written, it's based off of legislation. Legislation passed, I believe it was in 22. So it's in the Colorado Code of Regulations, right? That sort of has this process. When a jurisdiction adopts new codes, it is then subjected to that continuing resolution. Which is one of the things that I wanted to bring up here. We're talking about picking up the 24 cycle. This is it kicks in. The city may want, I don't know what tools are available to the city to delay or offset, but in terms of the state written regulations, it's there. The process, the Colorado Model Energy Code has three parts. It's solar panels, it is electric ready, which means empty space. It's not a component, it's empty space. In your mech room, for example. It's an empty raceway for a future thing. And then it's EVs, right? It's those three things. That's really what it is. And it has a very vague exception clause in there that allows, that states that, number one, the first thing is there's a variance for if you get a price that says, in order to affect the model energy codes, it's going to raise the cost of my project by more than 1%. 1%, you're out. You can apply and say it's too much. It's going to raise my cost. It's really low. And then there's another clause which we've taken and framed it in the best possible light for us, which is that the jurisdiction gets to decide what a quote major, it's like new stuff, it's all new stuff. So to gentleman's point about developers. But the other clause is major renovation. It's like only if you do a major renovation. And does it tell you what a major renovation is? No. So, as an example, the University of Colorado says a major renovation is when your project is valued at more than half of the replacement cost of your facility. Right? So
That's what we use, 50%.
so if your facility's worth $10 million to build, like is an insurance claim, right? If you're renovating something that costs $5 million, then it kicks in. Otherwise, it doesn't kick in. It doesn't kick in. It just doesn't. So if you're adding, even if let's say you have a $1 million house in Longmont, which I'm sure there's quite a fair number of those in Longmont, and you want to add a $200,000 garage to your house, you're good.
Yeah.
You're clean, right? You don't have to do anything. You have to do literally nothing. So that model energy code has this giant. If you're applying it in intentional way, it has holes in it the size of buses. It does. So, now, Tim Pate's working on another round. No idea what that contains, right? I don't know what that contains.
That's the new and improved, it's called the low carbon code.
So that, from my understanding early on, because we're on that bandwagon too already, it's a huge amount about concrete. It is like all about concrete, for sure. And then where you get your steel. Right? I'm not sure about shipping and whatnot, but that's a whole other, that's a whole separate thing. And the low carbon code might be way stickier than the model energy codes are. You know.
Well, and to your point, who's enforcing it? I mean, if that's when it goes to the state level, because they're the only ones that got the teeth, because the AG's behind it. Otherwise, the local jurisdictions, what kind of teeth do you guys have to enforce stuff like that?
Well, once it becomes an ordinance, we have strong enforcement ability, but you are correct. The state can't really enforce much.
No.
They might, I mean, if you're applying for a project that uses state money, they might withhold it. That's the only thing I can imagine.
Or someone comes in and says, hey, you made that contractor comply, and you made this one over here not, right? Or it's usually the other way around. You didn't make them comply, but you make me comply, so now I'm gonna go to the state and complain about you, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm sure there's a recourse, but it has to probably be a pretty high bar. There's probably, you have to get someone pretty upset first, right? As usual.
Now, well, the state decided that they wanted to get into the energy regulation business, and so when these codes come out as part of it will become a requirement.
Right.
And cities have no choice, they have to adopt those regulations. And I would say it's much easier for a city, especially the city of our size, to enforce these regulations than it would be a smaller city or somebody who's not even in a city, just somebody who's out in the county somewhere.
Right.
Those things may or may not be enforced, I know that.
To your point, boss, if you don't have, if you're in an unincorporated county and you don't have adopted codes, you're exempt. Because the trigger is adopting the code,
That's exactly right.
right? The trigger is adopting the code. That's the way the law is written.
Yeah, but I believe that the energy code is across the board. In other words, you may not have a building code, but it's kind of like the electric code. Just because you're building a house in the middle of nowhere, you still gotta comply with the electric code. And as a matter of fact, the state has its own inspectors that come out and look at it. Now, whether or not they're gonna come out and look at the energy code, I don't know. I have no idea.
Actually, it's not really what we're here to discuss, but one of the questions that we've looked at is, well, this new requirement adds workload to our plan review process. And
We
so
have
who's
quite a
looking?
few items that we wanna kinda go over. I don't know, we're gonna spend too much time on any item.
And the reason I brought this up is because the fallback, and we'll close this out, I agree. The fallback is coming back to the city, and where the public is gonna say, wait a minute, how unfair is this if we have to start compiling all these things, unless we have real clear definitions as to where we're gonna go with this as a city. That's all I'm saying. We have a real clear pathway for success for our builders, for our developers, that it's not so vague. Like right now, it's real vague to me, and if I was gonna come in and do a development here in Longmont, I wouldn't know which way to go. I mean, because the pushback from the general public is that, well, if it's gonna impose on my little simple life I have here in Longmont, that's why that Boulder. All of a sudden, we're becoming like Boulder. That's what the sentiment's gonna be. That's a problem for public sentiment, and the city council's gonna be hearing about it over and over and over.
And that's where it will be started. It'll be at city council. I mean, it's their direction. I know we've made some of those adjustments. Like you talked about the 3 phases of that. What did you say? It's EV ready,
It's electric ready.
electric ready EV, and then
solar panels.
And solar panels. Yeah. So there's and we're using in about every development we have, apartment complex. You're seeing that, right? In parking.
Right.
And
The parking.
if I can state, like, I do all the residential plan review in Longmont, And we have already adopted Appendix AT in the IRC, which is the solar ready provisions. And we have also adopted the entirety of E34 in the 2021 IRC, which does require the car chargers. And I don't really see much pushback unless a citizen is going to build another garage and I ask them to put that in there because they're like, we just built this house a year ago, we want to have another garage, but the code isn't very descriptive whether, hey, you can have one EV charger and then you're not required to add another. So
And where do you draw the power from? You know, because the power demands are excessive
It's
on
always
those
been-
panels.
LPC's always been considered reliable as far as.
Well, but that-
You're right. There's going to be a point.
Well, most panels along are what, 200 amp coming in?
Not the old ones.
The old ones, my house is
They're not
100 amp. Yeah, my house is 100 amp.
On single family, I think most of them are 200 amps. On the townhomes, a lot of them are 125, 150.
After 1970. Yeah, anything before 70, like my house is 100 amp. You know, and
Well,
so,
we still see 60 amp ones on now.
yeah,
Do you really?
Yeah, 60 amp A-frames.
yeah. And so, you know, to put another EV on a 100 amp, on a 100 amp circuit, it's not feasible.
And then you can, then they would come back to Blossom and they'd cry and they'd say, hey, it's gonna rate, you know, I've got to buy a new panel, it's gonna jack up the cost of the whole thing. And then he can go, no, it's okay, and it's just part of the regs, you know, it doesn't apply.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It is an administrative step unless you, anyway.
Yeah, but part of the, I mean, our makeup of new residential units has changed, and we're not building as many single-family homes, but we're building a lot of apartment buildings
And townhouse.
and townhomes. And so, there again, the regulations that we're speaking of today, the building codes are not retroactive, okay? It's only for new construction. Okay, and I have not heard one comment from anybody regarding capacity from the power company to provide reliable service. I mean, I've just not heard anything. Have you heard anything, Mark?
No, we're fortunate because, you know, our power supply is very solid with the Longmont power. But you get down to the metro area in Denver, there's all kinds of challenges going on. Boulder, city of Boulder, right now there is a fraternity. And again, I'm coming out of the world I'm in. They got rid of their boilers because they were leaking and went total electric. And it took them 6 months to get power to that building up in the hill. They went total electric.
Did you have to go three-phase?
They went 3-phase and they had to bring new lines in. It was extremely expensive. And they wish now they would just dug with a whole new boiler. You know, for us, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Look at whatever.
Michelle, would you like to start and present your
Sure.
codes?
Fire could start. That's why.
And if you guys need to take off, you can. I mean, I don't want to hold you up.
I'll say sorry real quick for being late. Had a car hit a Santiago's in Brighton and I had to babysit. So
They give you some dinner.
They give you dinner, dude?
I know, I
Can I
wish,
tell them about the
no.
meeting?
With this drill drive-through over here by Lowe's, my gosh, you're slow. Oh well,
Yeah.
sorry for that.
Mr. Chair, just point of order. I think we need to accept the June minutes first.
And notice that Andy was here at a such and such a time.
He was late and he didn't bring lunch.
It's like 6:45.
That's
Standard time.
He didn't bring dinner.
Yeah, okay. We recognize that Mr. Ulmer has arrived, and we're glad to see him. And Mark, what do you suggest again?
Oh, I just, point of order, do the approval of this June 6th meeting minutes.
Yes, the June 6th meeting, are there any questions on the June 6th meeting?
Move we approve the June 6th meeting minutes.
Second.
So it's been seconded, all in favor? Aye. Done. Move on. Thank you.
Are you happy now, Mark?
Yep.
Okay. And Andy's here, we're all happy. Did everybody get a chance to look at any of the proposals there? I mean, you can see, I know Matt had a little sheet. I'm gonna take one and pass them around to this guy. This is just, what I'm passing out is just a general summary from ICC of the changes to the 24 IFC. It's not, I didn't put a lot in there, because we could spend a whole class on it, right? So this is just a general, Plus, did you get one? Okay. So, and they're kind of done by, it's kind of by section in here. And I don't know that we have strayed or you know, Tom mentioned that, you know, Boulder's got their own amendments, we have our own amendments, Commerce City, Wellcat. But it's kind of what makes it work here, what locally makes it work, and what we can enforce, right? And you look at staffing levels, and you look at response capability when you're talking fire, and that's what drives a lot of our amendments. So the sheet you're looking at is from ICC, and that's generally what they've changed in the code. And then a couple of them, this is from a sprinkler, like, group, and it just talks about a couple that are in the IBC and the IFC. So that's kind of just background for you.
And you have the two of them playing nice together. You got the IFC one, the 9 and the 10, and the IBC one's playing nice.
Yep. So because our friends in building and us, we like that. That way we all talk the same language, right? So the big push, and you know, you keep talking about, we're talking about electrification and stuff, so batteries are still not far from everybody's mind either, so that's also another energy source that's been a source of, I don't know, sometimes contention, but a lot of use, right, lately? So I don't know, Mark, is there anything you wanted to address at a high level before we look at the specific amendments or the summary? And I won't read all these to you. But you can see we have a fairly good mix of what remains, a few that we have modified.
Isn't the batteries in the IFC, it's about what, chapter 12?
Yep.
Did they do a lot different in the 24 than in the 21?
Yes.
Yes, that was kind of one of their emphasis points. So now we're looking at detection.
Okay.
Local detection is not a choice.
Does it specify the kind of detection? Is it specifically like a heat sensor, smoke sensor, something
That
else?
is up to local jurisdiction in a lot of cases, right? So it depends on the quantity and if they're storing them, if they're actually manufacturing them, or if they're, some of them are below their 30%, right? When they're storing and working on them. Anything else you want to add from the code stuff?
Well, chapter 12, Andy, they do a lot of they lumped them all into just energy systems, and they're doing a lot of referencing back, eliminating a lot of the code language and referencing back to NFPA 855 standard for battery storage systems,
Which we adopt also,
Which-
is one of those.
which is a new standard addressing the energy storage systems or energy systems, and you got different types of all kinds of different definitions for
You
energy.
sound like you're fighting a cold, man.
Hmm.
You fighting a cold?
Mm-mm.
Mm.
I think you're chewing.
Okay.
What we've gone to in a lot of these, some of the rooms is also visual when issuing text, and that is for people, a lot like we do with CO, right? In places, so we want it visual. That's for staff too, staff and responders, right? So it's a quick alert. The sprinkler systems, I think they also, Mark, you want to address that a little bit with what they required? Because so it's not a choice anymore. I think it's, you have to suppress and you have to detect.
For
Energy storage systems.
energy storage system.
The record keeping one, 110.3, ITM sent to iRoll as representative of AJ.
That's a third party inspection, testing, maintenance company. So
Okay.
contractors will go perform annual 5-year maintenance on fire alarm, fire sprinkler, kitchen hood systems, and they submit them right to iRoll. And then we use that as our database.
Okay. And then they do a review, Andy, also, and then notify us if there's any critical deficiencies via email
Right away.
right away that need to be fixed, like they've got a sprinkler system shut down or an alarm system out of service.
Okay.
So it's like another inspector for us,
Right.
And it's database management.
and it's
Really
no cost
helpful.
to us either, so
Okay.
contractors pay to submit.
Nice. Nice.
And iRoll does stand for inspection reports online. That's iRoll.
That's kind of interesting. So the code is requiring the payment of a third-party service.
Yes. I guess you could call it yes. You could say that. But the code requires maintenance, right? Inspection, testing, and maintenance. And it requires them to send that to the jurisdiction. That's why we're having to send it.
But is this literally a company we're talking about?
Correct.
It is a company.
It's a
The
third
code
party.
is- The code is specifying a company to which you shall submit your records.
No, I referenced what we were doing to address inspection, testing, maintenance, record
So
keeping.
Longmont is using iRoll.
Longmont is using that
Okay,
rule.
okay. It's not like it's written into the code that thou shalt use this
Correct.
company. Okay.
Correct, and that's why it's a modification, right? It's a new system that was approved, or a new third party that was approved by the city of Longmont. So third party is the best way to say it, right?
Understood.
So the code does not specifically, the fire code does not say use iRoll.
So it's similar to conveyance inspectors.
Pardon me?
Elevators, yeah.
Yeah, conveyance inspectors. You guys do not have a conveyance inspector on staff, right? You third party it out.
Yes.
Okay, same thing. Okay, and they report to jurisdiction, which is the state.
And like Mark said, it's like another inspector for us, basically.
Right.
And then we're all city short is administratively, so we have the best data management system on ITM that we've had, I think, since I've been here in this spot in 10 years. And so before we do any inspections, we can always reference iRoll so we know what we're looking at. We go to these places, and if they have identified deficiencies, we can make sure they're cleared. So it's really been very helpful. So,
Hey, Michelle, just for clarification, and if you said it, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. What does your color codes mean on this spreadsheet?
go right up at the top, Blas.
Oh, dot, okay.
And per what you were saying, that those third-party inspectors are specifically going to be for energy storage systems fire protection?
No,
no,
inspection,
no,
testing, maintenance for
Fire
fire
alarm,
sprinkler,
Okay,
kitchen hoods, alarms, sprinkler, fire pumps,
understood.
all fire protection.
Fire life safety system,
Okay,
not energy systems.
Okay.
Fire systems. Fire code doesn't talk about that.
So,
overdue.
Michelle, since this is in blue, what is the nature of the addition or amendment to that section? Just to keep picking on one section.
And the record keeping one of all things, like really. So it's blue because it's a modification, right?
Right.
Because of the addition of iRoll, the third party.
I see. Was it different? So is Longmont responding to a new requirement in the code and then modifying the new requirement in the code?
No, I can change the color if that makes it easy. If I left
No.
that in black, because it's a remaining requirement from the fire code, I could have just left it black and just made iRoll blue because that's what we're using. So before, we had the contractor just emailing us, and it was not a very good system where we could reference quickly. We couldn't identify deficiencies quickly. We weren't making sure we were, adequate and appropriate
Understood.
with those lines. So really, it's the database piece that really is helpful with iRoll.
It's the service. The code requirements are all the same. The service is a change.
Correct.
Understood.
So I could make that all black except for the word iRoll, and that would be the only difference.
Thank you.
No, I want it to be clear, and if I coded that wrong, it maybe should be.
No, it's great. I mean, I think that makes it, it calls attention to it.
And like the no cost to the city, and really no cost to businesses, so the contractor picks that up. Now whether they
Pass it on.
pass some of that on, but it's really minimal. I think it's $10 to $15, and that depends on how many reports they have done by then. So it's relative. Like they probably don't notice it a whole lot. So it's pretty minimal.
So the reason that it's new is the numbers changed. Number one, it went from 109 to 110. And then we added that section that says inspection, testing, maintenance reports shall be submitted to the fire code official within 7 days of completion of the report through inspection, testing, and online reports. Because we're just making the contractors have a deadline to submit those reports instead of setting on them for 30 days and we got a violation or a critical violation, we don't know about it.
That we're not aware of.
Yeah. So that's why we did that.
And forgive the building official asking silly questions about the fire code, but so all of these changes that are blue or red, reds or deletes, Of the ones that are in blue, because
There's
of,
been
the,
some sort of modification. A lot of it's just code section.
because of the nature of the fire code, all of these changes are in effect immediately, right? As soon as the city approves the amendments, right, aren't fire code changes retroactive?
No.
They're not implementable at the next round of inspections for a structure. So for example, the one here about putting addresses in the backs of strip malls.
Yep.
Right? 50511. So how does that, when does that become enforceable for the
When they
jurisdiction?
pull a building permit.
Okay, so that's pretty far down the road.
In my view, I mean, this is not criticism. In my view, you have the authority to do that already. As written, you can go ahead
That's
and do
what I
that if you have
understood.
the want
I mean,
to.
that's what I understood.
But if you want, it makes sense, if you wanna make it clear so that nobody can complain, that's fine.
We didn't wanna make it retroactive.
I guess, I mean, maybe that's too broad. Anyway, I'm just trying to learn a little bit as to how these things become incorporated.
And a lot of that is
Enforcement.
response related, right? So if we have guys that are having a difficulty, like let's say at night,
Mhm.
and it's a strip mall and they can't identify where an odor's kind of somebody's collapsed somewhere and it's the middle of the night. So that's when, and that is one we're working with building on. So it's going to be in both codes.
Mhm. I mean, that makes sense. That's one of the reasons why I picked
So
up
that
on
it-
I
when they pull a permit.
actually enforced that today, by the way. It was a strip mall on 900 South Hoover. They put in a new restaurant, and they didn't have the right suite number, which should have been C, they used D. And I said, and by the way, please update your letters in the back doors too. Yeah. So,
And I can only think that would help with utilities, and anybody that's
Yeah.
got deliveries,
Right.
etc.
Think of those
Help
logistics.
everybody.
but retroactive, we're not gonna go around and notice everybody for not doing that. But if they pull a permit, they're reviewing, I'm gonna make them do it. I mean, that just makes sense.
And been on the address of the side forever, right? Contracting, so we can see it. And you'd be surprised how many people we have to write that up. So,
Can we relate that to like a level 1, 2, or 3 alteration?
Yeah, that'd make a lot of sense too, right?
So even at a level 1, it's only going to help the owner and the occupants of the building. So
and provide a great level of public safety efficiency.
And that'll catch a lot more structures,
mhm.
right? And this is, I mean, that specific modification is a very low cost modification. It takes as
Yeah,
much as
how
spray
much
paint.
does a letter cost?
So
Right.
it's
Stencils.
And some stencils. You can color it yourself if
Yeah,
you really
if
want
you
to.
really wanted to.
You
Right.
could. Yep. What other questions might you guys have? The code has caught up a lot of places, so that's the red.
The pump room construction sizes, wouldn't that, this is an interesting wrinkle. In the IMC, there's all kinds of requirements about accessibility and serviceability, and it sounds like you're sort of repeating that, the 30, 30, 80 space.
Our good friends in building gave us those dimensions.
Those are good numbers.
Hence.
Okay.
So we wanted to make that.
Yeah.
What we found is, and like Mark mentioned and Bloss mentioned, that what we're seeing a lot of construction of apartment, multifamily, townhouses, multifamily, a lot. We found some places when they're requiring a pump, right? A lot of them do. They put one in wrong in one of them, and Public Works found it, and then there was no room to go in there and make the change. Like they put it in laterals.
Oh, they had to change the backflow because the backflow wasn't listed for vertical.
And they installed,
Installation
and then they
in the
couldn't change
horizontal.
it because the size of the pump room was not sufficient to work in, right? So we thought we would just clear that up for people, so that it can't be just a small closet. It needs to be a pump room size mechanical closet that we can actually move around in and perform maintenance in it if necessary.
I'm trying to think where, but I wonder if there wouldn't already be language more in the plumbing code that would talk about the need to be able to remove and replace the fixture without having to remove permanent parts of the construction.
It's
I
also,
think that's, I try to pull up, I believe that's.
For us, and for instance, in certain boiler rooms, an example, at Northern Colorado Medical Center, they put a high pressure steam boiler in the boiler house, but did not provide access to the end panel doors via double doors. And so we show up and say, hey, where's your access doors, full tubes? Well, the engineer did inspect it, and they had electrical panel 30 inches away from the back of the boiler. This ain't gonna fly, boys. So they had to go in and literally rebuild that boiler house and put garage doors up and down to be able to pull tubes out of that boiler. And so access is a very, very important part of what we're looking at mechanically.
So we're clearing that up. I mean, so it
This
may
will
be
clear it up if it's a requirement you're gonna make. I think that's a good point.
and
I think the whole, I mean, this is a pretty sneaky way to do things, but the argument that I can hear in my mind is, oh, this is not a mechanical system. It's not a plumbing system. At the backflow, it's broken off from the domestic system, right? It's actually a fire suppression system, so it doesn't fall in the mechanical code, it doesn't fall in the IPC, it's something else.
Backflow is part of the IPC.
IPC, right, but that's where it stops in my,
Yeah.
you know, so
So
I could,
meter, it goes out to the meter.
I could
So-
see it being argued that like, oh no, this is just a pump for a different, entirely different system.
People argue stuff all the time,
Right,
you know, and,
right.
and it's just, you just say, you know, I appreciate what you're coming from, but I'm afraid.
Yeah, we need to do this. Yeah, well, and putting it into the language really helps give the department some enforceable teeth. Right. And it also makes it feel to the public like, oh, it's not just your point against theirs.
Right.
It's something we all agree to.
Yeah, I mean, so this is this is again, not a criticism, do it however you think it is best. When I left here and then Erie, I was much more amendment interested. These days I try to write an interpretation, put it on city letterhead, save it in a file, be able to produce it and say, so that's what stops it. So I can say, look, I didn't just make it up yesterday. It's right there. It allows more flexibility. If I screw up, I can go ahead and I'm just gonna I've got a new interpretation because I botched that last one, which unfortunately has occurred.
I would just take that out.
Yeah, I mean,
This would take that out. Our interpretation would be
yeah. I
easy
mean, so I basically,
to
you know,
reference.
you can have an interpretation that code intends that you have, let's say, a certain size this or whatever, or code intends for you to be able to remove these parts, whatever it is. I'm not coming up with a great example right this hot second, and not make the amendment. Save it as an interpretation. Code already says you get to interpret it. Period. Dot.
So you're trying to say we don't need this? Is that
I'm saying for some of the things, for like the addresses, I don't believe you need them. You could write an interpretation that for your folks, this district, how this section 506, whatever, applies. This we mean for this to attend. However,
So we do have some position statements which we use when it's a little bit more in that gray, like you're saying,
Right.
the intention of the code versus what does the code say.
right.
And so we are taking that piece out. I don't want it to be interpreted. I don't want
Right.
it to be a discussion. And it's like I think Tom was mentioning, we have different things that goes to Boulder, goes to. So this is important to us because we've seen it enough. And we've had problems
That's
and it's money.
there's
and
the
that's
bottom line. If it
plus
works
that-
for you, do it.
that developer a lot of money to fix that room. And that's what we're seeing a lot. So
Well, and the key is, get away from, well, instead of this, I think it should be this way, it should be,
we don't fight
this
it.
is what the code says. That's why if you take the ambiguity away from the discussion, instead of an opinion, this is what the code says. Love you, but we're not gonna change the code. It's an act of God and city council to change the code. So this is what it has gonna be, not my opinion, this is the way it has to be, and then you can enforce it, that's your teeth. If it's written by code, you can enforce it. If it's your opinion, it's just that, it's your opinion. So I think we need to be careful, get away from the opinions and stick to what the code says.
Right, so I don't have to interpret. And like telling him, right now this is an issue for us locally, and so we don't want it to be. We want to make sure that it's cleared up. And if we stop seeing it, we get trained to build these right, we can delete it.
Yeah.
Because then we can reference the other codes that are necessary. We can always delete that piece.
There
So
There
code
is
cycle.
interpretation. I think one of the favorite examples is drywall underneath the staircase if it's enclosed. Well, when is it enclosed? When it's half the basement, when it's a closet and the door's right there. What about if the door's 2 feet out? I mean, I remember that one has always been. So at one point made that an amendment and then decided, no, we can just, the code is written and if in the, view of the inspector that it represents something closed where it's going to be difficult to see and not catch the attention, then we're going to call it that you need it. and then just we leave it, sort of code is written. So it becomes an opinion, but
But
opinion,
it's backed by code though.
it's an opinion that the building official by code,
Exactly.
so that opinion
Well-
becomes code.
And it'll make this plan reviewer's job so much easier if he says, okay, this is what the code says, you need to do this. That way some developer can come back and say, hey, I didn't know about that, you never told me about that. Hey, it's on plan review notes. That's gospel, that's God's law, you gotta abide by it.
And it's an opinion of somebody that looks at plans every day that are
Yeah.
taking these circumstances
Correct.
into account, not just some Joe Schmo that doesn't think about what's going to be.
And we see the other side of this, right?
Yeah.
Now,
And we
to
see
that-
the applicable
and that's a-
side,
and that's a good
application of that.
Because I come across locations that an engineer has specified that has been completely, totally out in left field. Completely. And we have to bring them back home to what does the state code say. And they argue, I show them the code, oh yeah, you're right. Then they have to then rewrite their changes in their plan review for the next job. And it's a kind of thing, and I was, Noah and I dealt with a job at CU in Boulder, several years ago, and we'll talk about that later, but, you stick to the code. Stick to the code.
And our code does stick to response too.
Yeah.
So our guys respond to these places, so they need to check
Yeah, you guys.
status of the pump, the panel for the pump. They need to know where it is, and they need to work in there with bunker gear and an air pack and helmet and all that stuff on. So it's not just like us little people. We got lots of junk on, so they need a little more room just to maneuver in some of those rooms too. And I just noticed that typo I had. So down there, chapter 49, which stays, that is a change from chapter 41. That is something that we added, I think, 2 cycles ago. 2 cycles ago. It was a document that was produced by Denver, and it's about alcohol production,
Storage and production.
storage and production, and it's distilling and beer. But what it does a really good job of, that document, and we use it as a reference before we formally adopted it, but it does classify what becomes a hazard area, H3, and H area over some of the other code where you have to jump around too much. So we kept adopting that. The chapter did change. And I noticed I left out the 1. It was 41. Our last code cycle now is 49. So we were keeping that. But I noticed my typo.
They added a chapter 41 to the fire code, so we had to renumber.
Renumber and find a new open spot. But we did that so there's consistency up and down the Front Range. And we do see a lot of micro distilleries come and go. So it's a really nice tool for both those people developing and owning a business, and then us being able to go in and enforce and tell them what they need. So consistent there. Mark, any other high points?
We eliminated valet trash.
Yes, that was one of the. It's on the sheet I sent to you.
Prohibit valet trash.
I guess you got me, what is that?
Yeah,
Oh, you don't know what that is?
no.
Oh,
Oh,
do you guys know what that is?
Yeah.
So it's on the sheet I gave you. That sheet, yeah.
So these apartment owner, the apartment management people,
Items on it. That one, yep.
the apartment management people hire these companies, and they put all their trash cans out in the corridor
Oh, I see.
on
Trash bag.
on a certain day, and then people come around and pick it all up. Well, what we're finding out is they're blocking the corridor. They get a
Obstructing
snow event
And they
or
still
weather event. They don't come and pick it up. They can't get there. So now we got trash. So now we got a corridor loaded full of combustibles. It has been at the code hearings for the last 3 cycles.
That's called valet trash.
It's called Valley.
Now, will that be retro, or is that only on new? Because that's not really a built thing, right? That's more of like a practice.
Service.
Yeah, that once it's adopted, then it'd be prohibited.
Because my
That's
dad
a
lives in
great
an
point.
apartment that does that, and so I was just curious.
And Boulder, I think, is going to eliminating it as well.
Are they?
I see a lot of it in Boulder. So
And they're looking at that too.
who is the enforcement unit behind it? Code enforcement? Or fire?
Fire.
Fire is interesting. Okay. I know what it's called.
Once we discover them, once we know about them.
And when they call us about them, then
Yeah.
we say no.
So that's a really great point, though. So that is immediately active. It's not triggered by any new construction. Where does, as a resident somewhere, how do I know, or as an operator.
It is triggered by new construction because each new home that gets built in Longmont gets charged $119 per unit for a poly
And this is not
escrow
multifamily.
fee.
No,
It's
yeah.
only multifamily.
Poly escrow fee, what is
Correct.
this for?
That is for every single new dwelling that comes in because they get charged for the trash service that is provided by us to come to their residents. But if they were to do a third party, such as this new
Valet service.
correct is implemented, they have to let us know that, or else we charge them, and we don't really have anything on our application that
It's the trash can, it's a $119 trash can.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Polycart.
Gotcha.
Polycart.
Well, that, and I think since to Morgan's question, I think because it's a service and not necessarily a construction piece, which is why it would be more retroactive than more of the code.
I mean, we got chapter 3 that's automatically retroactive for general storage, general fire protection requirements that
And get chapter 11.
I mean, blocking an alleyway, blocking the corridor is all over the, it doesn't serve anybody, right?
Yeah.
And it's a hazard for all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
I'm just trying to pull on the thread of sort of what is the mechanism for enforcement?
Triggers it.
And
Right, are you gonna notify every
That section I
department?
also believe says it has to be approved by the fire code official anyway.
existing services. So you would
So we
notify.
just denied it.
Okay, I'm just curious. Like, I don't think it's actually our purview to like get in the weeds on that thing.
The people that really find it appealing would be who? The seniors, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't want to walk their trash somewhere.
Well, the complexes maybe don't design it to be very user friendly to get to the trash or to long distance.
Is that section?
Because they offer that.
So
It's
is that an accessibility
Instead of
concern?
recommending it.
Right. I mean, if you have to carry out your own garbage.
We're prohibiting.
Well, I tell you,
Yeah.
I had a location in Denver that they're remodeling the entire first floor because UPS and Amazon leave packages in the common corridor. And they're having to take 2 rooms out in the wing for deliveries in the mailboxes. Because there's so much stuff gathered in that exit corridor of that building, and Denver Fire is making a change.
More must
Yeah, well, it's access.
a ton of it.
Yeah, a fireman could not pull through with a hose because that narrowing, it was like this, it was 2 foot, because all boxes stacked up in that corridor. So Denver Fire is pushed on the building department, they're making them modify that corridor to allow access, similar to what they're talking about here, these cancers. It's crazy.
I just think it's a lot safer. I think then it's holidays and they want to put decorations.
Oh, yeah.
And then they
I
want to
think
put
it's
their
a good
little
move.
trees,
Yeah,
their
I
little
think it's good.
pumpkins out there. And they're cute and stuff, but then it just
Yeah.
you still have to get through that.
Going back to the public sentiment, are there gonna be trash can cops running around?
And it could be stinky.
I would move that we just basically go ahead and accept this. At the end of the day, this has been working. If you look at the modifications that are new, they're relatively minimal. That's a small deletions tend to be self-evident. Yeah, there's nothing. So I'm
Okay, there's a motion on the floor.
move to
Second.
accept the IC.
All opposed? All in favor?
I,
Done. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good
You
question.
bet.
Good question. Record keeping. I like that.
Okay, Ross, next.
Record keeping.
what did you do?
We just passed our amendments.
Oh. Well, what are your highlights?
You're next. What else? Wanna go to your section?
Yeah, ours is,
Are we
Record.
done with fire?
Yep.
ours is, you guys are free to depart if you want to.
Or hang out?
Yeah, there's a Bronco game on.
No, I
Why don't
know.
we have it on, we could put it up there and just put it on
It's on
silent.
mute,
Is there any questions
I
that you might have
Taryn
lost,
Stewart.
Taryn,
Taryn.
Matt?
Taryn.
Any
Taryn.
carryover?
Nice to meet you, Andy.
Always, I'm gonna
Anything
maybe
to chat about, or
Is that what
you
they
need
did?
us here for?
No, no,
Who's in your position?
I
Those
do
things I
plan
just- just
examination.
bullet points.
Residential?
Correct.
Yeah,
So I
The
was
big
a
items
residential
that were
plans
coming down
examiner
the road.
about 7 years ago.
Okay.
You were before Pam.
not kidding?
Yes. Yes. I think I've
I
met
think I
Pam.
sent you stuff.
I'm almost positive.
She departed and went to Safeville.
Okay.
Maybe we'll look at this one.
It's 13-0 Brunswick.
Is it
13-0?
really?
Almost halftime.
He kind of choked the first round. We got to hear the first drive, and it sounds like he was jitters, you know, the first part of the game.
Bo Nix is a phenom.
Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out.
I
Good to see you guys.
I believe.
Yeah, well, you know.
What are you doing next? What section are you doing next?
Early.
All of the codes.
All of them.
All of them? I mean, are you starting with building code or residential code?
IBC.
IBC? Well, maybe you wanna hear that? Want to hear a few minutes of the IBC?
So basically, one of my goals is, as you know, the building code and the fire code are sister codes, brother codes, whatever you wanna call them. So when fire does a change, there's a high possibility that that code also exists in the building code. So we follow suit by making an amendment, because if we don't, somebody could be reading the building code and not catch that amendment because they failed to look at the fire code. So when I'm done, all of my codes that have something in common with fire will have a similar amendment. So that's typically what we
We
do.
talked about the addressing as one commonality
Yeah.
there. If you look at the stairs in apartment buildings under construction that was on my list, you'll see that replicated probably on the building.
Sure.
Definitely.
And so if you turn the page, you will come up on a section that basically talks about the significant changes. Significant changes are basically changes, as you know, that are highlighted by this document. And we plan, and it's gonna become part of the code. We don't plan to change it, but we don't really see anything that needs to be changed. I mean, it's just gonna be part of the code. And, you know, we have different sections in here.
So you don't have city proposed amendments necessarily this
Not,
time?
not for these.
Okay.
These are just significant changes. If you wanted to learn more about these changes, there is a significant code change document that you can get from IBC that explains these in more
Okay.
depth.
Because I remember in the last cycle you had some specific
Yes, we had amendments.
local ones.
Yeah. We can talk about those later, but right
Well,
now,
and I
I
think
just
one of the
wanted to draw your attention to these documents. IMC. I do have one question regarding the mechanical code.
You did that separate.
The materials list for vent pipes includes a foam core pipe. Is that called cellulite?
Cellular core.
Cellular core. If you guys recall, way back when they had an incident in Vale where some people died of carbon monoxide, they blamed it on the Aspen. They blamed it on the foam core. I don't think that was the real cause. If you dig deeper, it's because it was installed incorrectly.
Correct.
However, a lot of people got the misconception and decided to just take it out of the code. Well, after we thought about it for a while, we were thinking about doing the same. Do you guys allow that in your town?
Manufacturer, whatever the manufacturer
And
says.
that's what we decided to do. Do you guys want to change that or just let it run?
I think it's in our fuel gas code right now. Oh no, we got rid of that in the 18. We
Yeah.
put it in 15.
If you look at the
Took it out.
definitions of category 4, category 5 venting,
Mhm.
okay, and every manufacturer, to Andy's point, specifies it has to be solid core pipe. Period. You know, and when I'll do an inspection, I'll tap that pipe, I can tell if it's solid core or not. The state will not approve the use of foam-filled cellular pipe for an exhaust. For the intake, air supply, yes. And for the exhaust, because it's not temperature rated for the fluid. So it has to be solid core.
Yeah, the problem we're having is that a lot of the forced air furnaces, even the the high efficiency ones, in their instruction manuals allow cellular core.
Yeah.
Now the problem with that is there's certain pipe manufacturers, Charlotte Piping being one of them, in their specs specifically say do not use their cellular core on exhaust.
And most of the time they'll specify an ASTM number on there. It's gotta meet that ASTM number.
I think it's D1785.
If it does not, then you have the teeth to say, you can't use this.
It's really how fine tuned. So I guess in my mind, it's like, how big is the problem? How much risk is there? And then how
Extremely minimal.
how
We got
much?
carbon
I've
monoxide
never,
detectors
I've never
everywhere.
seen it used, I don't, I mean, we don't have any, well, Matt, you're an inspector, but I've not seen it. It's
So-
everywhere.
So
Yeah,
how
most
much
plumbers
risk,
use it.
it's like how much
Plumbers
risk
are using
versus
Most plumbers use septic, of course, it's cheap.
how much clarity do you have in the field about the material application and the suitability of the material application? It's already not code legal to install the wrong material in a condition, right? The question really is it self-evident during enforcement? And if it's not, then becomes this question of, is there a risk that we're taking? Or essentially, is it still the builder's risk, right? It is, in a sense. By eliminating the material option or adding an amendment, are you moving the needle in some way? I mean, I'm channeling Andy a little bit here.
Here's the thing, if you think old buildings or something, and you look at the structure, just by analogy here, the structure in no way would be up to current code, but it's been standing there since 1875 or something like that. This is similar, where it can be debated, and it's a great point, Matt. I've heard that before, where like the Charlotte says, "Hey, don't use this for that," but then the furnace installation instruction said, "Sure, go right ahead." So it was a list of like several things around to go for it. And the reason that they're fine with it is, I mean, think about how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of those gone in, no problems.
Well, I would say millions probably.
Yeah, so literally no problems. It does make the news when these things go south. So, and then on top of that, you're talking about something, we have the carbon monoxide detectors everywhere. I mean, upstairs, I mean, sometimes there's like 5 of those ding dong things in these big houses. So, at the end of the day, I'm not terribly scared about it. So, just going with the manufacturer is fine with me. You're still pointing to something that says, you know, so.
Well, and to Noah's point, it puts it back on the builder.
Yeah.
Because if they put in Charlotte piping and it fails, then Charlotte piping says, we're not covering that. Our specs say
For how many times this gets discussed versus the actual problems associated with it. If we had so much as one person gets sick that we heard of because it cracked on its own without a soccer ball hitting it, I mean, whatever, you know, then maybe you discuss it, because it's almost a urban legend more than a thing. So.
Yeah, there's also another side to the whole thing. As you're speaking, Andy, it occurred to me that if you do make a modification, right, and you intentionally go in there and meddle with the language, right, and then somehow it gets missed, and there's an incident, so there's a lot of like ifs in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Now you, as a jurisdiction, look more precarious because you took the time to make a modification that then was not followed through, right? So now it's not like the builder's off the hook, but you've gotten in closer to that business, right? So I feel like, to answer your original question, it's already in the code. Material suitability, right? I would not say that there's a great utility in you changing it, or the city changing it.
Okay, with that in mind, there's really not a whole lot in the IBC that we plan to amend, other than housekeeping. What I mean by housekeeping is changing the code sections, because the new code just happened to change the code section, so now we gotta go in there and change the code section.
Just see a couple of those $9 too.
Can you speak about 110.5? Is that not alternate means and methods? I thought 110.4 was alternate means and methods, or
He's looking on the big spreadsheet.
yeah. Sorry, boss. I don't mean to like ambush you with some random question, but I know that this is a part of the code that I often sort of circle around this drain. It's looking at. I want to say it's alternate means and methods.
What page are you on?
I'm on the back of this. I'm on the top of your spreadsheet.
And the section is what?
110.5.
Oh,
And it says here, items deleted, no. Partial completion. And maybe I'm in the wrong section. I'm about to open it up. And
Yeah, but it takes forever. I mean, this is
Okay.
Right about the time we jet, this thing will be ready to go, so.
Okay. I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I was gonna pull up the actual IPC.
I don't know. From Block.
Y'all seen the 24? Weird
I
clothes?
just got a copy.
QR codes and all that?
Yeah, I just got.
I guess I can go grab the book.
I haven't opened it, but I got a copy.
Apologies, maybe the guys bracing up this building there to hit. This is ended.
I'm just curious, boss, if
Hey,
if you're,
sir,
that's a
is it,
modification, like,
looking
you're
good?
changing that one section, that administrative section of the code.
Yeah, 2 seconds.
110.5, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So in the fire code, it changed from 111 to 112.
Okay.
So it may be similar in the building code. I think Matt went to get it.
And maybe that's all it is, but it says partial completion, I'm just wondering what that's about. And again, I'm only sticking my nose in that because this is this one section of the code that talks about sort of your authority as the building official to make determination as to how to, you know, when's a variance okay, when's a new system okay.
It creates the master book in there too.
It probably does.
It does.
Have a good night. Thank you. Appreciate it.
110.5.
Yeah, that's inspection requests.
Oh, okay, then forget it. I'm sure we're not gonna get, that's not what I'm looking for, so, my apologies for
60 days.
pulling us down to that note, maybe it's 104.10.
I think one, yeah,
It might be 104.10, so, never mind,
it's 104 something. Man.
Kind of drive in that city. Nice folks.
okay.
For what? Oh yeah,
Thank you,
104.2.
Oh, they're magnetic or something. So,
Hey, Michelle, did you put this together with yours?
I did not.
Backside?
I did not.
Because these look old to me. These look like.
That is not my stuff.
Yeah, this looks like an old copy somewhere.
Right? Those were the tabs that were in the spreadsheet that you sent us.
Oh, they were?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, this looks like it's from 2006.
That must have been somebody else.
Oh, it is.
Just disregard that backside then.
Because
Oh,
if you
there we
look
go.
at some of these,
Just disregard that.
if you look at some of these sections, it's referring to the 2006.
Yeah, it
Right,
does.
that's what Matt was asking me over here.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this is
You got
very
everything
old.
Those
I would never
tabs.
send anything from the building code, just so you know. That must have been.
Yeah.
Sorry,
It said
I didn't know enough to know whether it was
yeah.
good or
We don't
bad.
expect you to do that.
Because of the delay in what's the energy and the residential code, we had trouble coming up with our version of this cycle. And that's another reason why we don't have a whole lot of amendments. Because of that, and we're waiting on direction from council to which direction we want to go for our amendments, especially the energy code.
You doing sprinklers in the single family unit or no?
No.
I'd look to these two to tell me that.
Townhouse?
Townhouse is other than, yeah.
Mark doesn't want those.
And from what I've seen, there isn't enough new stuff in the code that we want to amend out. I don't think we're gonna have, other than energy, I don't think we're gonna have too many new amendments.
so we can expect a healthier discussion next summer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next winter. No.
Or fall.
Well, I'm hoping city council gives us guidance to pursue the complete energy code that the state is working on, because once we have that, it'll be a whole lot easier to put our amendments together and be done with it. Because if they make us do it as soon as possible, then we're gonna have to do this all over again. And the reason I had this meeting is for that possibility that they said, don't worry about that, just adopt the codes and go with it. But if in the case they say, oh, Bloss, take your time, I'm fantasizing here. Go ahead and wait till the energy code is done and then adopt them next year. Well, then you will definitely be reinvited.
Can you adopt what you have? Or do you have to do it all at once?
Can we what?
Can you adopt just the codes that are ready? Or
I could.
And that's
you
what
have
we're
to
gonna
do it
ask
as a-
council.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I mean, there's a lot of options that we could go. I'd rather wait and adopt everything together because
Then it's piecemeal, right?
it's just a lot of work. You know, I didn't. This was unexpected. We didn't know that the energy code was going to be such a controversial topic. ICC beat that to death, and they finally came out with a solution.
So in Boulder, they didn't wait. They wrote their own energy code and it went into effect a few
Yeah,
months ago.
but the energy code that they are working on is going to adopt the energy code, the ICC.
They just didn't want to wait for this.
They're making their own amendments
Right.
to the code, so it's going to be in the code. So we don't have any choice. We have to wait for those amendments to come through. I do have a question though, since you're here. ADUs, accessory dwelling units. We have code language now available in the Appendix C of the IRC. We're thinking about adopting that. It's really not a big deal. It basically allows us to address the ADUs in a more efficient manner because right now the code language that we use, that Taryn uses, is basically code language that the planners made. Okay? So if you know how planners think, they don't think like us. And so I'm thinking, it's not a criticism, they're just different.
It's different,
They're just
right.
different. And we would rather own that since we enforce it. And so we're thinking about adopting the Appendix C.
There's stuff. This is difficult off the top of my head because I have no idea how long it's been since I read that. But a lot of it sticks to that same sort of can't be greater than 50%. There's essentially 3 types of ADUs. Throw out the attics because it almost never happens. Maybe it could happen in Longmont, but in most jurisdictions there's not the attic space. So you have a basement, you have an addition, or you have a detached structure, and when they write this stuff, they're really thinking about the detached structure, and hence the whole 50% the size of the primary structure. And in a day and age of where affordable housing is such a big deal, I wish they would just move past that and just get out of that. It really, I know the state is trying to do affordable housing things and ADUs and saying, hey, you can't prohibit this, that, and the other. They should. It should be a lot more, in my view, for whatever that's worth. Your private property, as long as you build it to the building codes that's safe, knock your socks off. But there's no reason to limit, if you have a 1,600 square foot ranch, to limit the basement to 800 square foot because it's 50% the upstairs is stupid. Pure and simple. That's just as dumb as it gets. And so I hope that this can be better than that.
Yeah,
Not too fine a point on it. I mean, that
I
just,
don't understand why everybody's up in arms.
Planning
with
codes would
ADUs.
not allow a basement to be.
Planning codes do allow a basement to be an ADU.
It's just but a full basement more than 50%.
The only time a square footage limitation comes that restricts an ADU size is when it becomes a detached structure, which is that 50%.
that's great, but I cannot recollect that appendix off the top of my head that you're talking
It
about.
just came out.
I think that it brings up.
It does. The appendix for
yeah,
the 2024.
So I would
it's-
amend that square footage. So I mean, if you want to have it because
You're right, it was
appearance and your character of the neighborhood for the detached, okay, fine, whatever. But to do it in the basement is just a lack of understanding of why they wrote it in the first place. So I mean, you can have a fine argument over, should something be half the size and character of the neighborhood, or whatever. You can talk about that. But to misapply that down to the basement is just dumb. So I hope that gets corrected.
I wonder in what situation though you would have an ADU that was over 50% of the above ground finished square
I'll give you
footage.
a range.
That would
So
be
if you have
pretty
if you have
atypical.
If you have a ranch home
Mhm.
and it's 2,000 something square feet, why restrict that basement to just 1,000 square feet?
I don't believe that is the case for an attached ADU. That percentage of the square footage is only applied to
That's
detached
cool.
ADUs.
That's great.
in Longmont.
That's great news. That's awesome to hear. That's cool. Good.
So
Wish I could pull it up.
Would
1504.
planning still then be responsible for like establishing setbacks and distances, or would that all shift to?
You didn't put by that?
Yeah, the setbacks just fall back to typical building code
Just on the lot?
on the whatever zoning district you're in,
Okay.
so that's not gonna change. Yeah. So, is there any other issue on the IRC side that is a big deal for you, Taryn?
I'll be honest with everybody here, this is my first code meeting, so I absolutely went bananas with everything that I saw was different. But just a couple things, 309.7 is regarding the single and two family dwelling sprinkler systems, which we have previously amended of the 2021 IRC, which I imagine we're going to do the same. R315 is a new section regarding sleeping lofts and the dimensions and the parameters that consider them to be a sleeping loft. Otherwise, dead space.
They
There's
signed with a non R311 staircase. Is using one of the other alternate stairs to that loft, and it's still okay as a sleeping area.
I haven't really looked into the egress aspect of the sleeping
Curious.
loft areas,
Yeah.
but I imagine a ship ladder would even be would suffice. 315, R315.
And there might be a in that appendix Q, that tiny home, there might be something that kind of, I don't know, appeals to that as well.
Yeah, the tiny homes, we did adopt the tiny home
You took
section.
that? Okay.
And that has pretty steep stairs, I've seen that, yeah.
There's another new section, R909, regarding roof coatings, and that pretty much just relates it to the ASTM standards. There isn't any, application table that really covers it. Rather than the total performance building or total building performance, they've added the component performance, and that's pretty much once the thermoconductive rating is less than or equal to the total building performance, it shall be in compliance for an addition. So,
I apologize, I must have missed something. That you're out of the 909 now, or you're still?
sorry about that. This would be N1102.1.5.
Okay, so you got the energy, and then instead of like a performance, they're calling it something different than total building performance?
So there is the total building performance, but then there is also a new added performance level called a component performance check.
It's an alternate path.
Correct. Yes.
Well, that's good, because it wasn't too complicated already. Good to see there's another
Well,
pathway.
energy codes are fun, aren't they?
Like half my list is chapter 11 on here.
Okay.
And is that the one that has the point system for?
That is going to replace the current code section regarding additional efficiency packages. Now that is additional energy efficiency credits. And so you are allocated a certain amount of credits based off if you have an ERV, an HRV, a high performance equipment appliance, over 80% of your ductwork in conditioned spaces. And those will all add up to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 points of credits for this additional efficiency credits program. Within a 5B climate, I believe we have to have 10 total credits. So during my plan reviews, I'll have to verify that. I don't know if they're going to implement that into some sort of energy software that they use, such as a HERS rating. It would make my job a lot easier if they did, you know.
Architects put it on the plan.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
what jurisdiction can say is,
Yeah.
you give me a page that sums this up, right?
Yeah.
Gives me a table, sums it up for us.
Mm-hmm.
And the credit system is also in the commercial energy code as well.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that section.
Well, and so the points system might end up becoming more prevalent here as an incentive for electrification, because that's another thing that council did ask for was options of incentivization.
Well, it's just a much more malleable approach. It's a way more sort of, it's like, well, I have an existing structure that might have whatever, 2 walls and some junky windows, but I can offset with this other stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just more
Put
options.
it in a PV system and you're done.
Complicated. It makes it complicated. Okay.
There's another one for gas fireplaces, on-demand pilot lights, the appliance has to be rated for over 50% efficiency rating. So that's one. Intermittent exhaust control for bathrooms. They can either have it be ran continuously through a whole ventilation mechanical system, or they can have an occupancy sensor, a humidity sensor. So there's like 2 other options with that.
This is multi-family, right?
This is all IRC.
Yeah, this is all IRC.
Commercial.
Yeah, so 1 and 2 family loans.
The big one that I put down was that efficiency credits section, because it completely overtook the previous additional efficiency package options. And so I'm gonna have to just really familiarize myself with all of the credits and whatnot. For you, Tom, M2002.4.1 requirements for discharge pipe for the boiler pressure relief valve. There's 13 new requirements that they have to comply with for the discharge.
New requirements?
Yes, sir.
Good section on that.
M2002.4.1.
Okay, it's simple.
Would they determine type of pipe probably?
And I would suspect, I mean, if the ICC is doing its job properly, I would suspect that they're bringing the residential requirements in line with other general industry practices, like you can't discharge that pipe somewhere near a walkway.
Right.
You know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's probably just tightening that up more than anything
Well,
else.
in some states, it's got to discharge to a point of safe discharge. So whatever that means, now, there is a requirement in a boiler room to be a floor drain. Run the floor drain, however, we see guys run piping along the floor sitting on unit strut. That's a fall hazard, it's a trip hazard. You know, can we prevent that? No, because they're meeting the intent of the code, which is to a safe point of discharge. ASME also states that that discharge pipe must meet or exceed the code of construction of the manufacturer of the boiler. Okay, so minimally 210 degrees. PVC does not meet that requirement. So we're gonna kick that out every time. I've seen every city jurisdiction in this state allow guys to use PVC for a discharge pipe on relief valves.
Is CPVC rated?
CPVC is not rated, it has a 180-degree temperature rating. So it's not rated, it has to be
Yeah.
copper
Copper or metal?
or metal, some kind of,
And then when you bring it to the floor drain, you have to change the piping in the floor drain, because you can't dump
based on
boiling,
the
you
temperature.
can't, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, there's a kind of, a lot of weirdness to it. But, you know, this is why for us, at our department, we're boiler proper. At that first valve, beyond that, I don't care what you use, you know, and, it's, we're gonna stick to what the code says for the boiler itself. Okay, now you said 13 changes or 13 modifications to,
Did you see?
Correct.
what do you see in there?
Alright, well, let's read all 13.
Huh?
Let's read all 13.
Go ahead.
1, not directly connected to the drainage system. 2, discharge through an air brake located in the same room as the boiler. 3, not be smaller than the diameter of the outlet of the valve served and shall discharge full size to the air brake. Serve a single relief device and shall not connect to piping serving any other relief device or equipment.
Correct.
Discharge to the floor, to the pan serving the boiler or storage tank, to a waste receptor, or to the outdoors. Discharge in a manner that does not cause personal injury or structural damage. Discharge to a termination point that is readily observable by the building occupants. Not be trapped, be installed to flow by gravity. Terminate not more than 6 inches above the floor or waste receptor flood level rim. Not have a threaded connection at the end of the piping. Not have valves or T-fittings. And be constructed with materials indicated in section P906.5 or materials tested, rated, and approved for such use in accordance with ASME A112.4.
Perfect. Okay, now, look at this picture. That's discharge pipes, this is at a school, new boilers at a school.
Tough for me to see, but okay.
That's a discharge pipe from the relief valve. You think that meets the code?
Can't really see it in here.
Comes out the relief valve, goes up over the boiler to a receiving tank for glycol.
Yeah, nope.
Okay?
Over the
Glycol?
boiler.
The glycol.
Ah,
The glycol?
The glycol. Yeah, which is okay, because, you know, it's okay to use 50% glycol in the system. However, on the relief valve, you cannot discharge it vertically. And the local building inspector signed this off. it wasn't with the building, it's with the state. So, me and John McGee had a conversation. We had a school. This is in Brighton.
Oh, really? Well, we wouldn't have been there.
Yeah. That's why John and I had a conversation about that. And the contractor said, well, what do we do? Not my problem. We'll figure it out.
Fix it.
Yeah, you can't run down the floor drain because the school wants to retain and save the glycol. Well, you know what? It's gonna cost them more to make the modifications, to put a pump in, et cetera, to pump back to the glycol tank, than just let it run to the floor drain and be done. Not my problem. I'm not gonna sign off until it's done, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so that gets to that
And
point.
you
You know?
can't
That's
put
a school.
glycol in the storm drain anyway,
No, this is sanitary sewer.
sanitary.
Yeah, even then, you know, it's, there's some jurisdictions do not allow discharge of the kind of material, and it's corrosive to certain metals, like glycol is. So, you know, to that point, you're exactly right, and that's a good thing to understand what the code says, because it applies across the board, even to the ASME border code.
And just to feed off that as well, one of our main mechanical inspectors brought up today, with higher efficiency appliances, they're going to have more acidic condensate. And with the
Great
acidic
point.
neutralizers, I looked in our land development code today, and we only have a code about the condensate going to, the sanitary sewer, but as we know, that's gonna be running.
There is, to your point, Ken, there is no language in any local jurisdiction that addresses condensate neutralization.
So that's probably we're probably gonna be on the
That
first thing,
needs to
because
change.
like I said, our HVAC inspector was pushing for that pretty hard this
You
morning.
can have standards from, so when you know, chapter one, the way things read, building divisions often, especially in smaller districts, have to enforce other ordinances besides just the building code.
Right.
And so if there's an adopted standard that the council's voted on that utilities wants, where the neutralizer is in position so that you're not killing all the bugs in your water treatment plant, then as an inspector you can call that. And we haven't received any pushback from doing that.
Yeah.
We do at the university, every single one of our high efficiency boilers goes through neutralizer.
Yeah, you guys do a good job. I'll look at
Every one of your high what?
Our high efficiency boilers,
category 4 and 5, yeah.
they just condense back, they rain back down.
Oh,
So
they-
you
They
gotta-
rain back in, so and then that condensate
If the
It's-
temperature outside is 40 degrees,
It's
a boiler of the 200,000 BTU will generate a gallon of condensate in the hour. It's crazy. Yeah, I'll be at IBG next week.
And to Andy's point, it's just a campus standard.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a campus
I
standard.
think it's smart, but, and where the problem lies, and this is why I think this needs to be something that and Safe Build's not on board with this yet. I've had discussions with those guys, I mean, but the fact is, in the mountains, where you have septic systems, okay, and you have a condensing boiler not neutralized, you will nullify the bacteria in that septic system. And you're digging up septic tanks all the time because you killed the bacteria in the tank, because that condensate is that acidic. If it'll eat the bottom of the floor sink or floor drain, the cast iron, it's gonna kill the bacteria in the septic tank. And I've seen campgrounds up in Estes Park tear out entire septic systems because they didn't neutralize their boilers. It's crazy. So yeah, that should be something that, as a jurisdictional chief,
Does that live in the state code somewhere?
it's not. I talked to Guy McMahon at Jeffco about it. I've talked to all the ICC, but I talked to, what's his name? He's other Wheeler. What's his name?
Greg Wheeler?
Greg Wheeler. I talked to Greg about this. My niece is married to his son, so we're at family functions all the time.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I mean, she was like, he's retired, what are you doing?
Yeah, my niece is married to his son, so I see Greg all the time, But the fact is, there's nothing in this, even in Dora. I talked to John McGee about this and to his people. There's nothing yet that has the teeth to enforce the application of neutralizers. Even the manufacturers, they might suggest it, but they leave it to the local jurisdiction. The jurisdiction.
Who runs the utility here? Who runs water and sewer? Who's the director for that?
Bob Allen. Well, Bob Allen's in charge of the most. Is that his part?
I check with him because it's his bugs.
That's a good
See,
question.
you know what I mean? It's
Well,
his,
it's interesting you point that out because in Boulder, they have to adjust their modification at the sewer plant during the winter months because the pH levels change because of the condensate dropping in the sewer lines. I did inspections there and we had a discussion about that.
Wow.
They said, yeah, about November, we have to modify our treatments because the pH levels go up considerably because of this.
And we have to lower the temperature too.
Exactly.
for discharge.
It's a crazy deal.
What was that about the temperature?
We have to lower the temperature for the discharge from the plants,
Yeah, into the watershed.
because it's raising the temp of the rivers.
Yeah, it's a crazy deal. I mean, especially now as we get more and more efficiencies going on. You know, we're looking at them all the time and we're writing violations all the time, but, you know, if somebody really wanted to push back, there's nothing in the state boiler code that says you have to do it. The chief and I have talked about perhaps maybe adding as a regulation change. We're in regulation change next year, we're gonna consider it. But you gotta back it up with, like we said, code and what the manufacturer specifies.
Yeah, our mechanical guy was pushing for that, and I mean, not just for the bugs,
Yeah.
but for many reasons.
Yeah.
So he was already pushing that we had the requirement for neutralizers for high efficiency.
Yeah, we see it all that, and also,
Catching that? Is that what
something
you're-
else
you're
for you
catching
boss, you guys to catch on and the changes coming in electrical
Where are you
code.
seeing it, Terry?
That in CSD one does specify that a category 4 or 5 water heater has to be protected by an EPO at the door.
I'm not exactly
It
catching
has to
it.
be protected by.
An EPO, a kill switch.
When I look
Yep.
at
What
how
water
condensate is being
Water
drained,
Correct.
and I look at the municipal code about
It's
where that can
2021
go,
change the National
It
Board of
says
Inspection Code.
hazardous
And
material
it's
to
mandating now that there be an
sanitary
EPO at the
storm
doorways
sewer
for
versus sanitary sewer, and it
For
doesn't say
door
anything for
size
sanitary,
too.
sanitary
Door
sewer.
size.
Yeah, okay, if they're big,
It's,
okay.
yeah, I don't think it's addressed in our
Any other
code.
action?
Yeah. What else, guys?
Basically, what I would like for you to propose is that the mundane changes that we're making, that I consider housekeeping, and then, we'll probably, I'm guessing here, but I'm thinking we are going to adopt the ADU Appendix C, and then make a motion to revisit any further amendments if we have to wait later on to create those amendments.
There's a motion on the floor?
Well, he can't actually make the
We
motion
can't
yet.
use that on the floor.
So you'd like a motion to just wait, I'm not sure exactly what the.
Make a motion to approve what we got, and
Which code? Which specific codes, Blas?
all of them. We have all of the amendments that we're gonna make here in red line.
So all the ICC said, just
All
not
the
energy.
ICC codes, except IECC
There you go.
and the energy portion of the IRC.
And have you considered just amending out the IRC energy and using the energy code, just the R there?
We could, couldn't we?
And
Because
if
it's a
there's
redundancy,
conflict,
right?
Yeah, you're right.
or you could do it the other way around, really,
Yeah.
but
We may do that if, they want us to move forward.
I mean,
Say that again.
so in other words, chapter 11 of the IRC, this lovely 1,000-page book, is ripped out of another code. The energy
Right.
code is really 2 books. It's the commercial code, and then it has the residential. But this back half, this back 120 pages or whatever, is essentially stuck into the IRC. So on the off chance one of them said one thing versus another thing, one can consider tossing one so that there's not confusion.
Why would they say separate things if they're pulled out of the same code?
Typo.
Stupidity. I mean, that's why they have the erratas and so forth.
Human
I mean,
error.
I see.
I was in, just got into the IRC 24 today, and at one point it refers you back. It was about like the termite section, and they used to have the map for the termites in with all the other R301s. Now they've moved that map back to like 318, but they still have the R302. You know, so when they get done, I mean, the first round of 24 is going to be just filled with errors. So when they do the second edition,
I see.
it'll have lots of little fixes. So that's one of the reasons.
Which is why it's important to get the digital online premium.
Yeah, for 800 bucks, I don't think
One of
so.
the
Now,
one of the interesting wrinkles here is that because Blas is dealing with this possible delay to the IECC adoption, the 24 IRC already has the energy codes for residential in it.
Mhm.
So really, it's the commercial section of the IECC, which is delayed.
That's a good way to put it.
That
That's correct.
included, that included IRC. They
Right.
delayed the IRC because it was related to the, in the energy.
The IECC. I'm pointing to the idea that, you know, you could gut either side, depending on which way you want to bundle the packages of adoptions. You could,
Good point, yeah, we could remove it out of here
yes.
and then just take the IECC.
And apply that, or vice versa, right? Since you already have it in the IRC, if it's more convenient to get a cleaner adoption that way, then you take the IRC into consideration and you only adopt the commercial section of the IECC when that comes. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. So, just can you recap for us again? It's
Okay,
It's all the
approve
amendments.
the mundane amendments that we made to the existing amendments that we already have. And approve the ability to approve the IRC without those amendments, because those amendments may not come till later. And that's where your idea of amending it out, because we can't get to it. If city council wants us to move forward on adopting the codes and waiting for the energy codes.
so can we just say all of the ICC amendments as proposed, with the exception of any amendments regarding energy consumption or energy efficiency?
I move to adopt all of the proposed ICC amendments as written, excluding energy.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Other than that? All in favor?
Aye.
Good to go. Thank you. Okay. I'll leave it in your hands.
So we may reconvene next year, I don't know.
Do you have a timeline that you suspect, hope?
Well, if they let us delay this, then it may
No,
not
it's
happen
not.
until late next year, possibly 26.
We go to council to ask direction on December 10th,
I don't see it.
so we'll know more then.
Did you mention ADU, section about ADU too previously? That's not part of that, but you just did, right?
Is that
We
is that
address
appendix?
that as well.
We didn't really propose an amendment to that, but I did say that we probably will amend
Did you
Yeah,
want
we can
that?
work with this,
Well,
the
that's-
You
energy
guys
people.
understand
that
They
an
don't
appendix?
we will
refer to the
and adopt
code section
the,
11, they refer to the
they're
energy.
adopt
And
the
they're
ADU
parentheses.
section in the IRC.
So it's an appendix?
That's probably
We
what
can
we'll
adopt this right now in
Okay.
council.
We need to get these guys trouble the wagon.
And then.
Oh, another code that had recently changed, which I thought would be
So I don't
kind
know
of,
about how you.
it's just interesting because I don't know, it's just
Then
an interesting
ask
code.
to amend it.
E3405.1, new electrical panel doors once open cannot impede egress.
They're all bringing in now.
So
The admin.
the egress has to be calculated or approved once those doors are
It just means you
open. It
can't.
can, yeah,
You can't put it together.
correct.
We're doing
Okay, so Blas has another amendment he'd like us to talk about,
Yes, sir.
or another adoption.
Go ahead.
Blas believes, so clarify if I get this wrong, you're going to adopt the IRC's appendix on ADUs. That's the intent.
We also have a meeting next week with the manager of the planning department to discuss the current ADU regulations in the land development code and how we can intermingle the appendix and our current adopted code, so.
It wouldn't hurt my feelings to see, for selfish reasons apart, but if the board got your summary of the IRC changes, and definitely down the road, it would be interesting to see what they're doing with the ADUs.
Okay.
Is there a conflict here if
We steal his stuff?
if we agree that the appendix can be adopted, but then there's an existing local ordinance regarding ADUs as
Land
well?
development,
I mean, is it-
land development code?
Are we
It's our problem?
no, it's not our problem. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I mean,
Alright.
What's code enforcement?
And just to clear up, it does, not more than 50% of the primer doing it is in the
is in the appendix.
It is in the appendix.
So in the appendix, it says not more than 50% the primary, but that's regardless
Of
whether.
the area of the primary dwelling, yeah, it doesn't say
That's what I mean,
detached.
so that should be
So
rectified.
that's something that.
And that's in our, that's
Do
in
we,
the
do we wanna
IRC,
revisit
but
this?
in our code,
Revisit
it's
this after
specifically
the
for
first day of that for city
detached
council?
versus,
Yeah, but if we adopt this, then we're gonna wanna make sure.
You need to amend the appendix, is what I'm saying.
I see, I
And
understand.
now that means you gotta come back to the board, right?
Yeah.
Or no?
So when do you anticipate city council having their decisions made?
Well, we'll get the guidance. We were gonna move in front of them November 12th, but that got pushed back to December 10th.
Okay. Do you think it'd be a good idea to meet after the first of the year, just to review what they have decided and?
And if it makes any changes to anything else.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it would be ideal to do it in February,
okay, yeah, I'm.
because that'll give
I'm all
us
for that.
December and January to.
Because so we can go forward with
Finalize
everything
it.
except for chapter 11 there.
Okay.
Is that right? Is it chapter 11 that's coming out of that?
Yes,
And the other, the state electric code, right, is what they call it?
but the state low carbon.
Low carbon.
We have the state energy code, which if anybody wants a copy, we have a copy.
Do the state,
I have
I
it.
think I have that
There's a
already.
motion to approve, get out of here,
Move we adjourn.
Seconded.
we're done. Thank you.
You got it, bro.